Such an important role for each of you as senior officials in the government, noting that you're here with your own personal opinions and thoughts and all your own. So I don't know who wants to go first, but yeah, there you go, that's on.
Hi, good morning. I'm Wendy Kay, and thanks Jillian and Lindy and the entire ClearanceJobs crew. It's really a pleasure being here this morning, talking to a very varied group of folks that are in the national security folks, whether you're on the recruiting side or you might be out there looking for a job. So my national security journey started right out of college. I joined the Navy. My parents thought I was crazy, but, similar to what's happening now in the late 80s, lots of interesting things going on in the job market. And honestly, I didn't start national security journey for the mission. I started it for the job and the paycheck. But what you quickly realize, and I've been in Department of War my entire career, with the exception of a 2-year excursion I'll talk about. The interesting part about the journey is I quickly realized that the mission was just so interesting. I went through officer candidate school up in Newport, Rhode Island. I went down to the Navy Intel and Intel Officer Basic Course in Dam Neck, Virginia. And then I landed probably one of the best jobs you could ever land as an ensign in the United States Navy. I ended up at this new command down in Key West, Florida called JTF-4. And during the late 80s, early 90s, we were very similar to today, actually. Very interesting parallels are starting to show. The Cold War drawdown, the war on drugs started, and I just happened to be lucky enough to be assigned down there. And that, going through officer candidate school and then into Intel school, it was my first touch point with getting a background investigation. And I literally had no idea what it was all about. Now, many years later and many background investigations and a couple of polygraphs, and being in the security profession, I realize how necessary it is. I realize that it is a key component for any agency to have clear, trustworthy personnel so that the mission can be done. It really doesn't matter what federal agency you belong to or you might be recruiting for. You want people that can do the mission and are ready to go as soon as they walk in the door. And that background investigation is the first piece to it. So I stayed down in Key West for a while, was an Intel watch officer, did detection and monitoring of drug trafficking, shipments, boats, planes. It was almost planes, trains, and automobiles for many years down there. Then went out to the El Paso Intelligence Center, worked as a DoD liaison, stood up the office, and got to see law enforcement and how they worked in the national security field. So, as we think about today and as you're recruiting for folks, the asymmetric piece that I got to see firsthand was really the foundation for my career. I got to see how when the federal government squeezed in one area, what the drug traffickers would do on the other, and that cat and mouse game, the agility, and new way of thinking about how to work through this problem set and detect and monitor drugs. So fast forward, I end up in D.C. I think everybody ends up in D.C. at some point when you're in the intel business, and found myself as a senior executive on the Secretary of the Navy staff, and did intel policy work, military intelligence program oversight, just kind of helping set the guardrails for oversight of our intel programs for the Secretary of the Navy. And then one day I found myself, and actually this is where Vic and I, our career paths actually went on the Secretary of the Navy staff. I found myself doing this thing called security policy for the Department of Navy. And I have to say it was just one of the best things I could have done. I really got to understand all what happens behind the scenes and what the policy really means for cleared individuals and industrial security and information security. And so it was just really a fascinating job for me. Move over to the Department of Air Force, do security policy there for several years. And then I decide in 2023, hey, it's time for me to retire. I'm gonna give this private sector thing a try. So I did that for 2 years, and lo and behold, six weeks ago, I find myself back in federal service with Department of Air Force as a rehired annuitant, still in the security business. But now we're thinking about how do we, as a Department of Air Force, as a Department of War, how do we have folks that think about the adversary, China in particular? How do we think about them differently? And we need folks, whether they're going to be in federal service or they're going to be out in a contracting, a GovCon organization that's supporting federal. We need folks that can think about the adversary and what we're up against in vastly different ways, and to think about problem sets. And, the good news is this generation does that in spades. I'm a Gen X. I am not a millennial. And so I think we have a real opportunity here as you guys think about today and the national security journey that everyone's on, if you're in this room. I think we have a real opportunity to find that right talent that thinks totally different about the world, the globe, and the adversary. So I'm looking forward to this discussion and, seeing where we go.
Mr. Minella, would you care to share your journey?
Thank you, Jill. And thanks for Lindy for inviting me. I'm really happy to share the stage with Wendy. We've had a great work relationship over the years, and big respect for her. So I started my career in national security as an enlisted sailor. I walked into a recruiting station in Meridian, Mississippi 38 years ago and enlisted, didn't tell anyone in my family. Yeah, I was really a popular kid. I was in the Navy 3 weeks later. That's how fast they could get you in back in those days. And it was the best decision I ever made. I did have problems at some point, thinking, wow, did I make the right decision? But ultimately, without a doubt, changed my life in many ways. Very small town growing up, not a lot of opportunity there, but I wanted something a lot bigger, and I also wanted a paycheck. This part of my career was probably the most foundational that I had out of my entire service, and that was because in the hospital corpsman rating, which is essentially medicine, I had the opportunity to serve in emergency medicine. My very first job in the Navy was in labor and delivery at Naval Hospital Orlando. Welcome to the United States Navy, right? Doesn't matter. You're an able-bodied corpsman. Get in the game. And so I did, and I learned a great deal, was able to deliver my very first son in that same labor and delivery ward as a young sailor. So pretty cool. Not many people get to say that. My career, while I enjoyed those things and learning in the foundations of those, I was really looking for something much more operational. So I went into a specialization which brought me into survival instructor work, aerospace physiology and water survival, and teaching aviators how to survive in a variety of complex situations with a downed aircraft, whether it's a helicopter or fixed wing or you name it. This was incredibly important to my development because I was an instructor through a lot of this, and I really learned the importance of communication and the ability to hold an audience's attention, and also when that doesn't go so well. And I think that's important for you to learn when you're young. So after this, I did a couple tours in this. I became a Navy diver. The Navy just kept throwing opportunities at me, and I became a parachutist and really just enjoyed every aspect of that. Best job I probably have ever had, honestly. But greed got in the way a little bit, and I wanted to make more money, and so I pursued a commission in the United States Navy. I was selected for that, went back to the University of Mississippi through an ROTC program, and was commissioned as a naval officer, and then entered into the workforce at that point as an officer. I I eventually was able to get into naval intelligence. I flew unmanned systems for 3 years down in Pax River, Maryland, and we did deployments all over the world, including the southern border. It's interesting how those things come around every generation. And then eventually, once I was in intelligence, I checked into the Pentagon 3 months before 9/11. And I was stationed at the Navy Command Center in an office called the Chief of Naval Operations Intelligence Plot. This organization was completely destroyed on 9/11. 3 months into my naval intelligence career, I lost nearly my entire workforce. Foundational, if you can only imagine what that was like, and the importance of national security, personnel security, and just security in general, of what that does to a young naval officer at the very beginning of their career, and very important for me. I did a few more tours, and then I retired about 7 years after 9/11 and became a civilian. This is where Wendy and our paths crossed, working for the Department of the Navy. And I was able to get into some things that I really, truly enjoyed, primarily on the clandestine side, doing clandestine and covert work with the interagency, as well as counterterrorism. It was a true passion for me, and I didn't even know it until I got into it. Truly great. I did that for a few years and was eventually selected for senior executive service, a position that gave me greater responsibility in the same mission space. And then in 2022, I was selected as the Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy for Intelligence and Security, giving me broad oversight responsibilities of both naval intelligence, Marine Corps intelligence, and NCIS, as well as making me the senior agency official for all aspects of security: personnel, info, physical, insider threat. It was all a responsibility that I had. In January, I was also given the opportunity to serve as the Undersecretary of the Navy. Outgoing administration, continuity of government type decision, and I served in that role concurrently as the Deputy Under until April of this year, when I submitted my retirement. And so I've got 11 days and then I'm off the Navy's books for the first time in 38 years. So pretty cool.
Well, thank you both for sharing that journey, because I think that's a really important narrative in recruiting in the national security space, especially when you're trying to fill specific roles. And then just hearing all the different things that you didn't know that you were going to need later, even for your own personal journeys and in your career. That's really helpful to hear those stories, so I appreciate it. So Ms. Kay, you've held senior intelligence and security roles across both Navy and Air Force. So how do you think those mission level security priorities should shape how we recruit, vet, and retain talent? In other words, how do you translate strategic national security needs into hiring and security and workforce planning?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I was thinking about this, I think the environment today is probably one of our most challenging that we've had from a national security, intelligence, and security side. And, the thing that comes to mind for me as we translate those mission priorities is, as you are recruiting or you're a security professional out there or an intel professional that's, maybe looking for a job, we have interesting dynamics playing out that require us to think differently, require us to use data in a vastly different way. And so versatility, to me, as a practitioner in the intelligence and security fields, understanding how they come together and are mutually reinforcing for each other. You cannot do one without the other. A background investigation is the foundational piece to readiness for the Department of War. We want folks that, one, we know are trustworthy, but certainly, understand what the mission is and have some flexibility. I think the opportunity for us to find those folks out there that have some nonlinear career paths, like Vic and I have done over the years, where you can see it in a broader perspective, but also get it down into some of the very specific eaches that our missions require, to me is what we're looking for and what you should be recruiting for, whether you're recruiting for a government agency or a GovCon. The ability for new folks and folks my age to be versatile and to have some varied experience that looks at the world a little differently from a competition standpoint, whatever it might be, whatever agency it is. We cannot go after and meet our national mission objectives if we think if we think in the old Cold War stovepipes. The whole of government approach it requires the national security apparatus to empower all that. So for me, versatility and, looking at what we need from what's on the other side of our border, I think is hugely important, in that we find folks that can think massively different. Just looking at all the things that are on the board over here, AI, the ability to model data, to understand what the data means, I think is huge for us. We have so much data. So to me, Vic, and I don't know, you may have an opinion here as well. Finding those folks that can do that, I think, is important for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely agility is key, and just adding on those different experiences along the way and seeing those, you want to say the different factors that, make somebody more standout candidate, but that's great. Mr. Minella, given your work overseeing intelligence and cybersecurity training across the Navy and the Marine Corps, how do you see the talent needs changing for intelligence and information warfare professionals, in this next decade, if we can think that far? And what skills do you think are going to become table stakes, and how should hiring leaders adapt?
I'll take this a little bit more holistically, but I'll start with a couple that are obvious as we're transitioning such a tech-heavy environment, and it's all of what most of you certainly already know, and that is what was niche or good to have 10 years ago is now going to be a staple and a requirement, such as engineering. When I came into the intelligence community, there were a lot of people in the intelligence community with international relations degrees. It's important. I'm a political science major myself, very important. But as we've transitioned, engineering has taken on, especially with data engineering as well, has taken on a significant role and a need from an academic standpoint. That's not really where it ends, but I think it's a great foundation to understand that we need engineers in this space to evaluate adversary weapon systems, to do foreign material exploitation, to see things that we cannot see with political science degrees in the national security space. It takes engineers to do this. People who are AI savvy, who are tech savvy and data savvy. We need people in those academic backgrounds. But there's a couple areas of national security that are really rising right now, and I'll go into one of those. And that's primarily on the area of information advantage. Cognitive warfare, narrative intelligence, some of these terms that we've made up over the years. Some are doctrinal, some of them are new terms that you may not have heard of. Information operations. This is an area where we do not have a workforce to keep up. And we are going to work very hard in this country, I believe, over the next 5 years or so to build that workforce. And I'm actually supporting some of those efforts with some of my business endeavors as well. Our adversary has outpaced us significantly in the amount of talent. I don't know that they would be better than we are, but they certainly have the capacity to do more. We need people that grow up in these communities. Armies, I would just say in particular, is exceptional at this, but we need all the services, we need other agencies to grow in this capacity of people who can understand both classified problems, but also the influence and the shaping that's taking place in open source information as well. It's having a significant effect on this country. We need both defensive capabilities and people who understand that, but we also need to do better at offensive capabilities. This includes cyber effects as well. I think the one thing that transcends every generation and will be important moving forward as well is that please do not forget that softer skills such as your ability to communicate at all times, no matter the subject, and how important that is to your fundamental development and those that you are recruiting into significant national security roles. You can have a lot of information in your head. If you can't get it out in your written work or in a verbal or a briefing, you will never achieve the success that you could if you had spent more time doing that in a developmental set of roles. For me, that happened as an enlisted sailor, as an officer, being thrown into significant national security problems after 9/11, and being challenged beyond my wildest dreams to digest information. I talk a lot about triage when I talk to people in this information warfare space. You know, years ago when we were flying predator circles all over Afghanistan, you know, we didn't have the people actually to evaluate all that predator tape. It's the same issue with all the data coming at people now in a variety of other ways. There is no information cutoff date any longer. The information continually flows, and we have to have people trained and ready to digest that information quickly and make sense of it and communicate it.
That's great. I had heard something recently where with technology skills, you know, on the rise and people growing in that, but you know, perhaps some of the next generation not always advancing in the softer skills, that it might even flip what workforce training looks like. Instead of upskilling on the technical side of the house, they're upskilling more on the softer skills and putting money into that, you know, so that you could see some different shifts down the road. But
right. Can I add one more thing?
Of course.
Holistically looking at this, we also need to be mindful that there is a legal community, an ethics community, and those that work in policy that have to come along with us in our understanding of these new concepts. 5 years from now, if you're hiring attorneys to work in national security work and they've never heard the words cognitive warfare or information advantage, we have a real problem. They won't be able to support you in the types of rules of engagement evaluations that you will need at that level. So please don't forget that there is a holistic approach. We all must move together through that space of changing warfare and changing national security responsibilities, and that includes everyone in a support function, not just the operator.
Well, we're about 2 minutes out, so we're before our break. But this one last question is, I think just as we have people who are looking for talent and trying to find talent, how do you both hope to inspire the next generation of talent to pursue a security career? You know, even think about mid-career professionals, different opportunities. What would you say to them to try to inspire people to get them to help people want to pursue this type of career?
I love that question. I really do. One, because I hope throughout my career, I've had tons of people that I've looked up to and motivated me to keep going, that gave me the opportunities to fail, which I did quite a bit, but to pick myself up and dust myself off. So what I hope is through our career journey and some of the things we shared, you know, anyone from a small town in Mississippi, anyone from a small town from Iowa like I am, if you have the desire, you believe in the mission, whether it's on the intelligence side, the security side, you know, just go for it. Seize the opportunity. I think there's going to be tons of opportunities now over the next 5 years. It may not look the same as what I came into or Vic came into, but what I hope is you don't always have to have a linear path. I mean, if you go online and look at my bio, it has been a very nonlinear journey. But I've had tons of opportunity to just expand and grow and be exposed to people and thinking that I never imagined possible. So hopefully for folks that are listening, or you know, you look at my bio, it's that the journey has been tremendous, and I hope you'll get on the journey with us, because we need good folks in the national security space.
There's a saying that you have to be able to see it to be it. And so I think some of the things that I've started doing since I transitioned out of government is focusing in on things that I'm passionate about. Scouting, for example, middle schools, high schools. I'm speaking to several of those even over the next couple of weeks. I'm working with a university to build out their ability to advance research and engineering into the national security space, as well as in intelligence and security. I think the one thing that we all must remember is that while there are a lot of recruiters in this room, we're all recruiters in national security. And if we don't start acting like that, The 300,000 people that are leaving government right now, coming back into the workforce, they're going to find other work. And we need to take that incredibly serious. There's an enormous amount of talent entering the workforce right now. Some of these folks are scared, they're excited, they're probably both. I'm one of those people. There are many that are entering the workforce. You have a real opportunity to be a friend, a mentor, and a champion for these people. Now, that's if you're a recruiter. If you are a senior leader, and any opportunity that you have to advance the discipline of security, please take that on. That has been something lacking at senior leadership levels for a long time. We talk a lot about building trust with security. It is incumbent upon senior leaders to build trust down and in the security community, not just the other way around. Spend time with them, understand their problems, ask them, what's the hardest thing that you're working on today and how can I help? That works wonders for you as a senior leader to better understand what the challenges of your security enterprise are. If you're a security professional, and how many are in the audience, security folks? I see you. I just want you to know that. I have a soft spot, but the bottom line is we need to advance this work. Our entire country, the workforce that you're building for national security depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for helping us. We sometimes need that. We need that inspiration to keep going, even to keep recruiting. It's not just filling open billets or trying to fill these roles and get to the next thing for the next week. It's really advancing the mission that we have here, and it's that shared mission that we have in national security. So thank you both for sharing that. So thank you guys, and now we'll have, I think it's a quick, just a morning break, so you can get some coffee, whatnot. Thank you.